Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing something I've never done before, ever, here in my 12 years on YouTube. We're going to be talking about Activision. In case you guys don't know, Activision owns the COD franchise. Pretty crazy, right? Today you learned something. So yesterday, Activision Blizzard revealed their monthly active users, as well as a bunch of other information about the games. Basically, microtransactions are up, but players are down. I showed you guys this monthly active user chart here in yesterday's video, where we can see that Activision on March 31st of 2022 had 100 million monthly active users. Most of that is from the COD franchise, but keep in mind this is every single Activision game out there. But then we see 1 year later, on March 31st, 2023, it went down to 98 million monthly active users. Not really the biggest drop in the world, but keep in mind back in 2022, we were still kind of like towards the end of like the COVID, like the pandemic era. So all of these numbers are pretty much inflated around that time because so many people were still at home. So many people were still blowing a bunch of money on games online and things like that. Like the COVID numbers are like new highs for basically every publisher, every game developer out there. But what we can see here is that for some reason, somehow, Vanguard and the Caldera Warzone map outperformed Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2 just by a little bit. They had help from COVID still, but they still outperformed them, which is pretty crazy. But if we look at the other side of the Activision Blizzard umbrella here, Blizzard is down bad right now. Going back to March 31st of 2022, they had 22 million monthly active users. That's it. 27 million in June, 31 million in September, 45 million in December. You can see it's going up and up and up. And then once we get past the new year, and here we are in March, back down to 27 million. What you can infer from this is that Blizzard only tends to really kill it when a big new game is coming out, right? Something new, something large, something to get people excited about. That's when their monthly active users spike. But then once that game kind of becomes old and stale and whatever, it just drops back down into insignificance, essentially, which is crazy because Blizzard is one of the most iconic video game publishers, manufacturers out there. I mean, look at all the games they have: World of Warcraft, Overwatch, StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, Diablo. Like all of those games are under the Blizzard umbrella, and right now, they're down really bad, and I think Activision needs to pay attention to this because Activision could end up being in the exact same boat because they're making a lot of the same choices that Blizzard ended up making on their side of the company, and I say that as someone who plays an obscene amount of Blizzard games. So if you look at World of Warcraft, for example, this is a game that is very divisive, right? It's a game that's been out since 2004, but it's not the same game. You know, it gets updated with every expansion, but it's one continuous world. It's a really interesting premise, but to play WoW, you have to buy the base game and pay $15 a month, which is what puts off the vast majority of people that never got into WoW from wanting to try it in the first place, that $15 a month price tag. The monetization is something you're going to notice as a trend going forward. Next up here, we have Overwatch, right? When Overwatch came out, it took the gaming world by storm. So many people were playing this game and they loved it, and then they decided to release Overwatch 2, and they just stripped away all the things that kind of made Overwatch. They stripped away all of the progression in an effort to make the game free to play. And that was actually a bad thing. We're going to check out I'm actually showing Overwatch footage here. It's kind of crazy. Overwatch on NerosCinema's channel. But here we are. This is like my hero gallery, my locker, whatever you want to call it, right? And you can see like the older characters that have been around since Overwatch 1. I have so many items, so many skins, so many highlight intros, so many emotes, like so many cosmetic things that I earned in Overwatch 1, because in that game, because it was paid and had loot boxes, you could play the game, earn loot boxes, and then from there you could earn a bunch of different things, whether it's skins or whatever. And then on top of that, if you ever got a duplicate from a loot box, it would just automatically be changed into a currency that you could save up to then go out and directly purchase the things that you wanted. So basically, just by playing the game a ton, I earned a ridiculous amount of things within this game. Well, with Overwatch 2, they got rid of loot boxes, as most games are keen to do nowadays, and everything is now paid. There's a paid battle pass, there is paid items in the shop, there is virtually no progression in the game anymore whatsoever. If we check out some of the newer characters in the game, like Ramatra, Junker Queen, Sojourn, characters like that, you guys can see I barely have anything for any of these characters, even though I've been playing the game a lot since it launched back in October. And you may be wondering, well, why is that? Why don't you have a bunch of things? It's because the only way to get things is either randomly from the battle pass, which you have to purchase, or you buy them. That's pretty much it. There is no progression left in Overwatch 2, with the exception of golden weapons, which you get every time you get a win in a competitive match. You get 25 of these competitive points, and you need 3,000 of them to turn one weapon on one character golden. That's pretty much it. There is no progression essentially anymore, except for playing competitive and doing the battle pass, I suppose. They took like a lot of the core progression away from Overwatch, and I think that's definitely reflected in the fact that there's only 27 million people playing Blizzard games. Then on top of that, StarCraft is pretty much dead. Here's the Storm is, oh my god, I loved Here's the Storm. Love it so much, but man, that game's pretty much dead as well. Diablo Immortal is one of the most memed games ever, but therefore it's probably making a ton of money, honestly, because it's mobile. But you know, Diablo Immortal was like incredibly pay to win, but now we have Diablo 4 coming out, which has been met with a lot of controversy, but that is coming out, and I imagine like the monthly active users is going to jump up when that game releases. But still, it goes to further reinforce my point that Blizzard has started to get a little bit too comfortable with where they are. You know what I mean? Like, their games are no longer, you know, industry leading or innovative or anything like that. They are just these games that have been out for a very long time, and instead of trying to like innovate upon them, make them better or things like that, or even come up with new IP, instead, they're just relying on the same old IP and microtransactions. Every game is becoming more and more heavily focused towards microtransactions as compared to just, you know, things you can earn within the game, things that make you want to purchase the game in the first place. I mean, and once again, you look at the fact that there's 27 million total people basically playing Blizzard games right now, when it's one of the most recognizable and iconic brands out there in the gaming scene anyway. That's bad. And then you look at Activision, and you see that Activision is doing the exact same thing with the COD franchise. Instead of innovating, instead of trying new things, instead of expanding upon like what made them great or anything like that, they're instead just reviving old characters. Look at Black Ops Cold War, look at Modern Warfare 2019, look at Modern Warfare 2. They're reviving the same old characters and the same old stories to try to bring people in for nostalgia. They're stripping away most forms of progression within the game, aside from like the Dark Matter / Orion grind. That's pretty much the only thing to work for in the game anymore. And they're heavily pushing battle passes and microtransactions. They're doing the exact same thing that Blizzard has been doing over the last couple of years, and look what happened to Blizzard. Can you guys see the point I'm trying to make here? Look where Activision's going. It seems like they're doing the exact same thing Blizzard was doing, and now I think Activision might find themselves in a situation where eventually, it might take a while because Call of Duty is much bigger than some of those other Blizzard IPs, but we may find ourselves in a situation where eventually Call of Duty's monthly active users are dropping down to 40 million, 30 million, 20 million, as compared to the hundreds and hundreds of millions that it should be, given the brand recognition, given the market power of the COD franchise. I mean, for crying out loud, Microsoft tried to buy out Activision Blizzard King, with Call of Duty being like the biggest part of that for $69 billion. Like, it's obviously there's profit to be made here. It is such a recognizable and iconic and beloved franchise, but they're not really doing anything with it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not really trying to make it better. They're kind of just like pushing microtransactions, which we go and look at the microtransaction numbers they released yesterday. Yeah, I mean, they're making a ton off microtransactions. The games are losing players in droves, but they're still making more and more money from microtransactions because the games themselves, I would say, like, I mean, this is just like a random bullshit number I'm just making up in my head, but, you know, there's like 40% game and then like 60% microtransactions on top of that. You know what I mean? Like, the amount of things you can get from microtransactions as compared to the things you can actually earn in the game is absurd. You know, you can get like the core weapons in a game like COD. You can get the core, well, most, maybe half of the core operators in a game like COD, but everything else is in the shop, man. That's all they care about, is just pushing and pushing and pushing microtransactions and things like that. And I don't think that is a sustainable business model, especially in a world where Call of Duty is still, for some reason, releasing a new game every single year, and what you purchase in one game does not carry over into the next one. I think this is a very unsustainable model that they have right now, and I think that Activision might just end up like Blizzard, in the sense that they're going to be like this old company. Like, oh yeah, do you remember Activision? Do you remember COD? Call of Duty? Remember Warzone? Yeah, that was fun way back when. And then you might have some nostalgic players that would like want to go and play it and stuff like that, but it might just go from like this industry leading like forerunner of like the games industry, right? Every single year COD's like the best selling game. It might go from that to being an also ran kind of a game, you know, whereas these other games are now taking over COD, and COD just slowly fades off into obscurity because they decided to just push out microtransactions and stop caring about the core game itself for so many years in a row, and they pushed away, you know, their entire player base. I think that's something that could definitely happen. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how it's going to play out. I want to make this video here today because it was pretty shocking to me. I mean, Activision's numbers were not that bad in the grand scheme of things. It is still crazy to me that Modern Warfare 2, which was a massive bargaining chip for them, and Warzone 2.0 have less players than freaking Vanguard and Caldera. That's pretty telling if you ask me. So I think the writing is on the wall for the COD franchise right now, and something needs to happen, which is why I'm so hoping that Microsoft takes over, because at the very least having new leadership and a new direction and things like that might actually help the franchise. But yeah, just when I saw those Blizzard numbers, I'm like, man, and then as someone who's been playing Blizzard games for a decade or more now, you know, I've been playing lots of COD obviously, but I also love Blizzard games. I've been playing so many of them, and when I see how down bad Blizzard is, I think, man, Activision's like a couple bad moves away from being in the same spot, I feel like, because they're the same company and they do the same things. It's just like right now, like the name Call of Duty and like the nostalgia of Call of Duty and stuff is what's really kind of like keeping Activision afloat, it seems like. I don't know. That's just my personal perspective. I would love to hear what you guys think about this down there in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.